Hello, welcome back. If you've come straight from the introduction, a special welcome to you and thank you for watching straight away. If you've just come back for more, you're a subscriber. Today we are going to be looking at the second series of reviews on Scalextric catalogues. And today's Scalextric catalogues that we're looking at are the 1990s. So that's 1990 through to 1999. And we're going to start with the, this is listed in the 1988 catalogue, but it's also in the 1990, 1991 and 1992 catalogues as well. But this one is listed C.382, that's the model number, as a Jaguar XJ8. Now all of the searching that I've done has turned up this car. This is number 60. We're going to have a closer look with an overhead view of this in a second. But this car, number 60, all of the research that I've done has turned me towards this being the winner of the 1988 Daytona 24-hour, and was driven by, amongst others, none other than Martin Brundle, the Formula One pundit. So it kind of makes sense to me because generally what we see with Scalextric is around about a year for them to release a car. In the 1988 catalogue, this says that it's going to be available late 1988. I don't know when it was actually released. It may well have been released in 1989 for all I know. But it does make a special point that this isn't available right now as you're reading the catalogue. And the Daytona 1988 24-hour was actually January of that year, so very early on. So they may well have seen that, grabbed a picture of it or knocked up a quick model so that they could do some photography of that car for the 1988 catalogue. Anyway, we're looking at this from a perspective that this is actually the Jaguar XJR9, not the Jaguar XJ8. So the Jaguar XJR9, and indeed this is a replica, what you see here, of the car that Martin Brundle, amongst three other drivers, raced in the Daytona 24-hour. And I'll put links in the description. If you know any better, if I've got this completely wrong, please do let me know. But for now on, this is listed as an XJ8 and is part number C382. I'm going to call this Jaguar XJR9. Okay, so without further ado, let's have a better look at this car. So I'm going to bring the camera over, we'll have an overhead view, and we'll be able to have a look at more details of this car. Okay, see you in a sec. Okay, so here we have the car. It's a very nice car. I'll point out this is an aftermarket wing and decal, but it's largely what you would see on the original. The model I've got is missing a pair of wing mirrors as well, but the actual design, the look of the car is really nice. The decals themselves are kind of spray painted on. They're called scuff resistant decals. These ones are. This isn't, of course. This is mine. And indeed, you know, considering that this could have been released in 1988, it is very scuff resistant. It's got some really nice features with the Jaguar decals on the side there. If we turn it up here, you can see again down the side, very nicely printed. Good use here of these vents that you've got that have been depicted. You can see the door shut lines there. The wheels are nice as well. I think they're very in keeping with the whole car, and the smaller decals there. Looking at the front, again, you've got the Castrol and the Jaguar, the two lights here, and then this side again, similar looking. And if we look at the back, we can see that we've got the exhaust pipes and we've got a set of brake lights as well. So all very nicely done. And interior wise, we have our driver figure, and we come to see this quite a lot. This is the painted on windscreen wiper. But yeah, I mean, overall, it's a very nice looking car in my personal opinion, and I think it's survived very well. So what we'll do is we'll just whip the body off and have a look at the insides of the car. I should add, because I made such a thing of it previously in our 1980s, this is a 1980s guide. Okay, it's the last of them that we're going to see because there's a new guide coming from Scalextric, but this is the original type of guide. And of course here we have our magnet, the magnet traction magnet. We haven't seen those at this stage, but there it is. Next to our Mabuchi motor, and of course everything now is going to be running Mabuchi. I can't help but notice this, if you can see it on the camera or not, but this tyre is very, very badly made. There's a great big ridge up the top here, and of course nothing down the bottom there. So that's a very, very wonky tyre. And as it's going round, would cause handling issues with this particular car, which is a great shame. On the front of the chassis here, we've got a couple of lugs, and those lugs are used to locate into the body, into these slots here, so we can keep the body on nice and secure. So inside we have lights, and these lights are what we call grain lights. So this pops out, you can see that, there's that light. There's a couple of thin wires. One wire comes to a positive terminal, one wire goes to the negative terminal, and the way that the wires are connected to the guide is through this circuit board here. So the power comes into this area from these two tabs here. So we've got the red wire and the white wire coming from the guide, connected to the motor, red wire, white wire going to this circuit board, and then the power is being directed off on the yellow and the black down to these bulbs. So these are normal light bulbs, kind of thing that we used to have in our houses years ago. So they've got filaments in them, those filaments do blow. But the connectivity, as I say, is you can just lift this out. It's not stuck in or held in any way, and then the wires are pushed down, and then you just simply push that down to get your connectivity. Now, as far as the rear lights go, these are run off of these two. Now, I don't know very much about electricity. I do know that these are called capacitors, and I do know that capacitors charge. So there's some other circuitry involved in here that's essentially telling the circuit board that when it's not receiving power from the guide, i.e. when you release the trigger on the controller, to then make sure that you turn the power on that's available from these two capacitors and provide it to these two lights. So then they flash on as you release the trigger, and then as you pull the trigger again to accelerate away, then these two capacitors would charge up. Which is why we don't have any lights on at this stage, because they have no charge left in them. And then we have the motor itself, and of course we've got the the two wires connected, as we've said. Two of them are connected to the circuit board, the red and the white, and those are charged from the guide. Last point, the part here, these two, I don't know what you call it, bridge going over the top of the gear, very, very close to the gear. There's plenty of space under the body shell for it to fit. It's not like this is pushing down on there, but when you're working on this particular car, it's very easy to push those down into the gear, and then of course when you run it, you're gonna break the lights. And that indeed was the state that the car came to me in. It was broken, so I needed to solder those back on again. As part of the chassis design, they've started to build more features into it. So we've got not only the exhaust, but we've got these ducts here as well, which help with the airflow on the real thing. We also have to make note of the fact that the front axle is loose again. So this carried over from the 80s, where there's nothing holding that axle together. So when we do cornering, there's nothing to support the car, which is probably not a bad thing given how bad that wheel is, that tyre is on that wheel. So, but there isn't any support here. That said, this car is going to sit a lot lower than the other cars that we've been looking at previously from the 1980s. So I'm thinking this is going to perform quite well, and of course it has a magnet. So onto our magnet. The reason I've got this piece of equipment here is to give us a way of being able to measure how strong our magnets are across the various cars that we're using. So the first thing we do is we turn it on. That then goes to 0. We can do this with the body on, or it doesn't make any difference, because all we're doing is we're going to put the car on the scales. That's going to give us a reading, in this case 58.2. We press the tare button and that resets our reading to 0. If I take the car off, you'll see minus 58.2 or minus 58.1. And now what we're going to do is we're going to place the magnet over this section of the scales, and that's going to give us a reading, and that reading will be how much downforce the car is getting. So in this case, we have a downforce of around about 31 grams. Now, 31 grams, 32, 35 doesn't really make any difference. This is between the 30 and 40 gram mark in terms of the amount of downforce we're getting. That's not very much. If I were to bring in a modern Scalextric car and put that on the scales, and I may do that later, you'd be looking at something in the region of 100 grams of downforce. So, 3 times as much downforce available today than we have in this particular car here. So just as a gentle reminder, the downforce that we're getting on this car is in the 30 gram range. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a note of that, and we'll use that when we're looking at it in terms of our lap times, and we'll relate that back to the other cars that we test whilst we're doing our lap tests. Okay? All right, I'm going to put this back together, and then I will meet you trackside, and we'll see how well this car performs. And just as a reminder, we are going to be treating these tyres, and that takes about 10 minutes. And if you're interested in how to do that, there'll be a link in the description taking you off to a video which shows you how to get that done. Okay, thank you very much. See you in a minute. Welcome back. So we have treated our tyres and the car is ready to go. For those who've not seen this before, we have a timing system here that will call out the laps as I go round. We're going to do 5 laps, and the aim here is not for me to do the very fastest laps that are possible, it's to do 5 laps in front of you, and then what we'll do is we'll look at the fastest lap and we'll look at the average laps. Taking into account we've got 30 grams of downforce, or 30 to 40 grams of downforce via the magnet on this car. Now, if you haven't seen our 1980s reviews, we had 6 cars there. The top car was Ferrari 312 T3, and that did 6.66 seconds around this lap. Following that, we were then into the sort of 7.1, 7.2 seconds with the Audi Quattro, and then below that we were into the sort of 8-second range with the, what did we have there? We had a TR7, we had an Escort, and we had a Mini, all within that sort of range. So we're looking to try and improve on those lap times because we've got a magnet. However, we're using the original rubber tyres as well. So let's just see how we get on. So, without further ado, let's start the timer. Obviously got lights, which is nice. Okay. 6, 7. Now, tail slot. 6.9. So this is not a magnet traction car like today's cars. This is a old magnet traction car, so it's not very strong. Why would they do this? Because really what they're trying to do is open up their cars to a wider audience. Again, thinking about the 80s cars, we had cars there that we could barely drive. I mean, we were doing, as I say, 9-second laps with some of them on those early laps, and that was just to get around the corners. So Scalextric themselves thought, well, how can we resolve this? How can we make our game system more available, more open to other people? And they've done that with magnets. But they've taken a very small step with those magnets. So they haven't made it so that a driver can just simply grab the control and ram it full and watch the car drive around. What they've done is they've still enabled a number of skill elements that are required. You do have to slow down for those corners in order to be able to get around them. And when the tail breaks away, because the magnet isn't very strong, you see it break away. It's not that you're driving so fast that the tail is now broken and there's nothing I can do but crash. You actually have time to react and take your finger off the throttle, bring the tail back in line, and then continue on your road race. So I very much like what they've done here, and I know that magnets are a very difficult subject for some people. So what did we do? We did a best lap of 6.51 and an average lap of 6.82. So our previous fastest lap with our Ferrari 312 T3 was 6.66. And so here we've done 6.51. So we're you know, 10th and 500th below what we did with that Ferrari 312 T3. So a great start, if you ask me. This should be faster than the Ferrari. In my mind, it's done what was needed to be done. It's not made it super quick. It's not made it ridiculously fast. But yeah, I'm glad that that car performed in that way. I've obviously run a lot of laps with that car. I've gone quicker than that. I've gone slower than that. Same with the Ferrari 312. I've gone quicker than the recorded times. But that's a good time. I think that's a good representation of what we've got with our new era of 1990s Scalextric cars. So if you like this sort of stuff, you want to see the remaining 5 cars get reviewed and put through their paces on the track and see how they perform, please do subscribe. I also urge you to go look at the links to the original car, the Daytona 24 winner, as driven by Martin Brundle and 3 other drivers who I can never remember their names. And let me know, is this a Jaguar XJ8, or is indeed, as I believe, this is a Jaguar XJR9? Please let me know. I think it's a wonderful car. We can make that perform better with tyres. We've got lots of things we can do to that, but from its stock form, which is really where we're coming at this particular series of reviews from, great stuff. Thank you very much for watching. See you soon.